Hey guys and girls, how you going? So good to see you again. Mark Hummer here, of course, and we're going to talk about some Nikon releases, some new lenses and cameras and all sorts of accessories. So right, before I start on that, I'd just like to give a little introduction. I've been a little sick recently. I've got blood clots in the leg and multiple blood clots in the chest. And yeah, it's pretty serious. I've had to have some hospital stay time, a lot of tests and some medication. So I haven't been put a video out for a little while now, and that's why I've been quite ill. Right now I'm still a bit sick from it. I'm not able to work or drive and still under medication, but I'm well enough to do a little chat video. So I'll see how I go. If I do have a cough and a splatter occasionally, I'll try and edit that out so it's not too irritating for you. So just excuse me if you hear it in my voice or see it in my demeanor. You think, oh, Mark's not too great. Well, that's true, I'm not. But I'll try and push through all the same. Otherwise, I'll be waiting weeks and weeks and nothing's going to come out. So let's have a go and see how productive we can be. So initially there's a few new things I've got just going on around me I'll introduce first before we get straight into all the Nikon equipment. One is that you might notice that I've got a new procedure up here for my microphone. So it's the same mic, the same Deity sound system arrangement, that radio transceiver signal system, but what I've done here is I've got a little like gooseneck arm, and it just removes all the obstacles from in front of me, because in the past I had a little block here with a mount, and it was fine, it did everything right, but it was just smack right in the middle of everything, and I thought that was a bit annoying. And I'm constantly looking for ways of improving or changing things to make it both, well, eyeball and ergonomically better for the audience, that they're not seeing great big contraptions in front of me, but also for myself, that it's easy to maneuver and change and feel very comfortable with it. I'm really working on making this a lot more a modest looking system as possible. I'll give you a few photos, examples of people that I consider friends who do great video work, but I just think they're a bit overkill on the microphone. It gets very distracting. And I'm doing everything I can possibly to avoid the distraction factor of quality sound. So yes, you need a decent microphone, you need it pretty close to the face, but it shouldn't dominate the visuals. Let's face it, this is not a radio podcast, this is actually a video on YouTube, and people want to watch it, and what they don't want to be watching is microphones. They want to be paying attention to me, the products I'm talking about, and the subject, without being distracted. So I found this an interesting setup. I'm going to try it for a little while. You can let me know what you think. If you think it's distracting or it's an improvement, I'd appreciate your advice. The other thing I've changed also too, which I'll show you some photos about the procedure, was the little lamps here behind me. Now you can see these little Japanese style lamps. They're quite cute really, because the sayings on them are something to the theme of, and my Chinese is not that great, but it's something like love, hope, peace and happiness. So I think that's a positive message. What I've done is I've actually increased the brightness of the lamp. So I've had to change the actual mount fitting, the electrical base, change new light globes in it, and I think it's just a lot brighter and cleaner and whiter image. If I show you an image from the past, I'll put it up on the screen, you'll see it was quite dull and very yellow in tone, and that was really throwing my white balance out a bit. So now I've got a proper 5700 Kelvin light bulb, and it's a lot brighter and cleaner. I think, I'll run you through all the details of that a little later, but I'm running now LED lights rather than the incandescent lights that came with it, and I just think it's a lot more efficient, safer, cooler, and a better light. So I hope they're not overly distracting, but I think they're cute, and they do help a little bit with illuminating the subjects on the bench as well. So we'll see how that goes. Again, feel free to comment whether you like it or you hate it. So on the subject of Nikon gear, let's get back right into that. On the Nikon gear releases at the moment that's interesting to talk about is certainly the Z9. Now, Z9 in the past was all speculatory. No one actually had one in the hand. You didn't really see any production quality images. It was all, pre-production models. But recently now we've had people, professionals with the camera in their hand, and they've made videos and commentary on it. And everything I see and hear about it is extremely positive. So I'm very pleased that Nikon have seemingly nailed this 100%. And rather than saying, oh, well, eventually it'll come good, from what I can tell, it's actually perfectly suitable, usable, and of high quality straight out of the box. So you're not waiting for firmware upgrades and later on something might happen that's useful. It's all happening now, other than, of course, the 60 frames per second in 8K. That will be updated later, but that's not an urgency for pretty much anyone at the moment. People can wait a little bit for that, because you've still got the 4K, you've still got 8K, you'll make do. So I'm very excited that Nikon have achieved that straight out, and I think, even though that's extremely positive and the feedback from the camera is astounding, which is great, it's made a lot of people rethink their choice of leaving Nikon. Now they do have a cool, full professional body unit out there that does everything that they would expect of it. So that's a positive for Nikon, and I'm always pleased when Nikon do something great. I give them the thumbs up and congratulate them. I am a Nikon user. I like the Nikon products. I wouldn't be having all the Nikon cameras and gear I do if I thought they were rubbish. So yes, I'm very pleased that they're doing very well, and the sales look like they're booming. In fact, I think you've got like a 3 to 6 months wait now until you're actually going to be able to purchase anything. So that really shows that they've got their act together with sales and marketing, and just got to boost up that production so people actually get them in their hand. So having said that, of positive effects of the Nikon Z9 and how excited I am about it, I'm not excited because it's going to help me in any way. I'm probably never going to buy one. This is the sort of camera that's a specialty camera as far as I'm concerned. Most of its positive attributes and specialities are things that I actually just never use. So it's all about your use case scenario. You might have heard that term before, and it's very true. If I can get all the results that I ever need with my Nikon Z7 and Z7 II, then what do I need a Z9? Why do I need to spend another $9,000 Australian to just basically get what I've already got? So the autofocus being a lot better for both video and photo is fantastic. I think that would be a bonus, and I'd love the benefits of that, but I can't see myself spending $9,000 just to get a improved autofocus performance. Being that I've still got 45 plus megapixels, I'm still finding that I'm getting focus when I need it. I'm not losing shots, so sure, I might have to take a few more shots to make sure I nail things in focus, but I'll put sample photos up on the screen very soon to show you with the Z7 and Z7 II, I'm certainly still getting everything in focus and great quality shots, so I don't feel I'm really missing out for my application. And my application is, let's face it, it's mostly landscapes, wildlife photography in the form of birds, and then also, of course, a lot of portraits and festivals. And when I'm doing portraits, of course, the subject's not running away from me. So, super fast autofocus speed really isn't relevant. When it comes to my birds and wildlife, yes, then it's very handy to have something to hold onto the eye and track it. But quite frankly, I'm quite skilled at finding the focal point and anticipating the bird's movements and getting the shots anyway. And the sample shots I'll show you prove that it's really doable with any camera. Even back in the day when I was using my DSLRs, I was still getting focus every time. So that's just really a skill set you've got to learn rather than trying to just only rely on the technology of the camera. The camera helps, but you should already know what you're doing before you buy the camera anyway, especially a $10,000 camera. So yes, I'm very pleased. The pricing is very good. My first anticipation was it was going to be about the same price as a D6, which is around $10,000 Australian. It ended up being 10% less than that at $9,000 Australian, and that's very good. I mean, any reduction in price is a good reduction in price. So we're very pleased that they've done that for us and made it more affordable for the pros and more affordable for amateur pros who are quite keen to get into that market. Right now I'm very happy with the Z7 1 and 2. I am still desperately looking forward to firmware upgrades. We've really got nothing of any significance. The Z7 1 got a firmware upgrade recently, I think it was early December, but it wasn't particularly remarkable. In fact, I didn't really notice much of any difference. There's more sort of, I think, bug fixes and an update rather than a remarkable improvement. The Z7 II, however, when the firmware upgrade does come for that, what'll be a 2.0 or something greater, then I'm really expecting that that'll be a wonderful increase. It should be an increase very similar to the Z7 1 when it went from like firmware 1.4 all the way up to firmware 3.0. Then there was a massive difference. You can see the difference from those older firmwares and then the latest firmware, and that was a remarkable improvement. I'm hoping we'll get the same sort of thing for the Z7 II very soon. Certainly now the Z9 is out, it's really making us feel a bit old and lagging behind. So Nikon, come on, pull your finger out and give us that firmware upgrade soon so that we're going to feel like we're not missing out all the time and always endlessly waiting for you to give us what you promised us years ago. So apart from that aside, I'm not going to bag Nikon because I like them, but I am going to be honest in my opinions. If they do something right, I give them a thumbs up and a praise. They do something that I think is inappropriate or unfair, I'm also going to call them out on it, and I won't be shy in doing so. Not that they probably care about my opinion. I'm insignificant as a YouTuber, but I'm still allowed to have an opinion and I will voice it. So if anybody gets offended if I say something that you might think is negative, well, I'm sorry, but I just like to call it as it is. I think my job as a YouTube presenter is to give an honest appraisal and evaluation of what's going on. I don't want to sort of sugarcoat everything and just say, oh, Nikon did it, therefore it's awesome. And I end up like one of those Sony one-eyed supporters. I don't believe that that's the appropriate way of conducting yourself. So we're talking about Nikon products, and I've just spoken very briefly about the Z9. I would look forward to having a play with one at some time in the future, but again, I don't anticipate getting one anytime soon. What I would like to talk to you about, and I've just got some notes here because there's a lot of numbers to remember. We're looking at the new range of 24 to 70s. Now, I've got to laugh a little bit about this with Nikon because I think this is like ludicrous. Nikon definitely need more lenses in the lineup. It's good that they're bringing out new lenses, but when they just keep doubling up on the same thing, it does get a bit irritating. It's a bit of, what are they thinking? There's so many things we actually really need, and instead what they're doing is releasing more and more of the same thing they've already got. So let's just review the 24 to 70 categories. We've got here, my notes here saying we have, of course, the 24 to 70 f4, which was the kit lens that came out with the Nikon Zs when it first arrived. Again, a great lens. I mean, it was functional, sharp, it did everything it was supposed to do. Just a little bit boring on the f4 side, but it was functional. Then the next option we have, of course, they released the just very recently, as a complement to that, the 24 to 120 f4. Now it's a little bit longer reach, probably a little bit better build quality now. They're improving, of course, as they go. And it's nice that they've got something with a longer reach. I think that's very useful for people who go on holidays and they just want a one-for-all lens that does everything. But let's just face it, let's think back about this. Stopping and pausing a bit, we're talking about a lens here that's an f4. It has a reasonable range. But what was the whole point of the Nikon configuration? You know, the big bragging about the wide mount, Z mount was so big, and the shallow depth to the sensor. Wasn't this all about how optically amazing they could be? It just seems to me they're being optically boring a great deal. F4 version, why couldn't they have done an f2.8 version of that? They have the technology, they could have. Yes, it would have been more expensive, I get that. But Tamron have done it. They've done it with their 35 to 150, which is an incredible range, and that's actually an f2. Starts off and goes to f2.8. So it averages about f2.5, I would say then, if you look at it through its range. So if they can do a 2.5 version like that, why Nikon couldn't do one is just shocking to me, actually. Really appalling. So what they're doing is just re-releasing more boring lenses. I mean, they did have the F-mount version of that, the 24 to 120 f4. Why couldn't you just use that on your FTZ adapter? You get a pretty good price anyway. And let's face it, if you're really worried about optical perfection and quality, you wouldn't be buying an f4 anyway. So the other lens they've recently released, which I think is quite amusing, is in the same range as the 28 to 75 f2.8. All right, it's good as a 2.8, but it's very, very marginally an improvement on a 24 to 70. You just lose a little bit in the wide end and you gain a little bit on the long end. And let's face it, we all know what this is. Okay, so this is just a remarketed version of the Tamron 28 to 75 f2.8. And that was a pretty versatile, useful lens, I suppose, but it's really not remarkably different to anything else. So what Nikon have done is they've got the license, they've got the glass off Tamron, and they've simply just rebranded it and fitted it into a Nikon Z system. So they probably, improved it with their mount, their maybe their motors for autofocus. So it probably performs very well, but even if it does, so what? What's the big difference between that and the 24 to 70? There's not really a great deal. It's going to be a little bit cheaper, but again, not significant, not very interesting as a lens. So then, of course, you've got the 24 to 70 f2.8. So when you consider they've got 4 versions now coming up of the Z lens that's around that 24 to 70 range, to me that's really pushing and overkilling a particular market rather than releasing lenses that we could use that were of a different spec and size. So I thought that was a little bit amusing and odd, and I don't really get it. Also, you've got to consider that there is an FTZ adapter, so you've still got access to all the F-mount 24 to 70s and their versions. As I mentioned, the 24 to 120 f4 F-mount would have fitted on straight away, and on the FTZ adapter would work fine. So really, I don't get all these odd lenses that they're bringing out to cover the same market. The other lenses I would like to talk to you about releasing very soon, which I am a positive frame of mind of, there's the 100 to 400 that's come out. Now that's a great versatile lens. I can see a lot of application for that. At f4.5 to f5.6, the range is pretty good. It's not an excessively large f-stop number, so even at 5.6, it's very usable at 400 mils for your wildlife. In fact, the lens I use that's sort of equivalent to that is pretty much exactly on spec with that. So I'll just show you what I'm using. You've seen it before. But here we have the Nikon Z, and you can see I've got the 70 to 200, and in order to get more range out of that, I've got the 2x teleconverter. Now let me tell you, this teleconverter is amazing. Teleconverters in the past were terrible. They always reduced the quality of the image greatly and were not of any inspiration to use, but right now this one here works fantastically and I'm very impressed with it. So I just like to say, as a combination, now I get, well, if you double 70 to 200, you end up with a 140 to 400. So 140 to 400 or a 100 to 400 as a new one is released, it's pretty much the same spec. This one ends up as a 5.6 and the new one ends up at 5.6 at 400 mils anyway. So if you didn't already have a 70 to 200, I would highly recommend the 100 to 400. I think that's a great option. It's not much bigger than this configuration or heavier, and it's specifically for that purpose. So, as I say, that's a great combination. But really, if you've already got a 70-200 or you're thinking of buying one, this combination with the teleconverter is really a smart way to go. Plus, you'll always have the teleconverter for new lenses that come out in the future. So you get new longer lenses, whether it be 400, 600, 800, and you want to increase the range, well, you can whack your teleconverter on. You've still got it ready and set to go. So this combination to me is so close and so suitable that I'm not going to buy 100 to 400, because all I'm doing is doubling up on what I've got. And I just mock people for doing exactly that, having so many versions of the same thing. So this is more than suitable and does the job. And of course the other advantage of this is just take the teleconverter away from the equation and you're back onto a fantastic wedding, festival lens or a portrait lens, 70 to 200 at 2.8. That's astounding. So that combination there, I think, is the way to go. Certainly the way I'm going to go in the future, and I'll keep that for the time being. What I'm really looking forward to coming out as a new lens release that they're excited about, there's a 400 2.8. Now that's going to be very exciting. It has a built-in teleconverter, 1.4 I think it is. So what you'll end up there with the option of 400 at 2.8 or around 650, say, at f5.6, so, or f4 I should say. So if you could end up with around the 600 plus at f4, that's really good. That's a beautiful option. You've almost got like a zoom lens then, because you've got 400 mils and then you can step straight up to 600 plus without any difficulty at all. If you've got the teleconverter and it's suitable with that, you could put your own 2x teleconverter in, you end up with 800 mils at 5.6 or greater. So that's going to be amazing. So that is really a pretty cool lens. I'm very impressed with that lens. I think that is going to be very exciting, but it's going to be damn expensive. We're going to be talking around the $20,000 mark. I'm not sure exactly how much, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was very close to that. So if you thought the Z9 was expensive, well, just sit down and hold your breath for that one, because that's going to be a massive expense. But a brilliant lens, no doubt. The one I'm probably more excited about for wildlife and action is the 600mm. Now the 600mm, there's no real guaranteed specs on it yet, but I'm imagining it's a 600mm f4. And so if it's a 600mm f4, if that's how it comes out, that to me is a brilliant package. I won't know if it has a teleconverter as well. It may or may not, but if it doesn't, it doesn't matter, because I have one anyway. And to be able to go from 600mm, use my teleconverter and go to, well, 1200mm, that's incredible. So sure, it's going to be a lot darker. You're going to get down to something like f8, but you just got the reach if you need it. If you need to fill the frame and there's enough brightness and light and sun on the subject anyway, then I think you're going to really kill it with that lens. That's going to be amazing. Of course, you could also use the 1.4 teleconverter into your collection, and then of course you can shoot that at around 900 mils, and it'd probably be about a 5.6, and that'd be amazing. Probably the better way to go, really, because I think the 2x teleconverter will give you a lot more range at 1200, but I think they're getting a bit dark and that's going to make life a little bit hard. So not having to compromise so much on the brightness, 5.6 at around 900 mils, fantastic. So that's very exciting. Now don't quote me on these numbers, I'm ballpark figures and estimations. I'm sure it's probably like 660 mil and 842 or something, but it doesn't really matter, is it? We're just talking about generalities here, and we have no fixed numbers anyway at the moment. So these big zoom lenses coming out, that's what I think is exciting. Building 4 versions of a 24-70 I think is just ridiculous and not helpful to anyone at all. But that's just my little rant on those lenses and options coming out. I know that they'll keep inventing new exciting stuff. As you know, here I have the 50-1.2, which I really like. It's a fantastic lens and great for your portraits, particularly for full body portraits. That's where it's great, or for couples. So you just got to be a bit careful with the shallow depth of field, because yes, you are going to get like one eye in focus and the other one's out if there's much of a tilt to the head. But providing you're in the right distance from the subject and you consider that when you're taking the photo, you should do very well. So it's a brilliant lens. I highly recommend the 50-1.2. My most thing I'm looking forward to, I suppose, as a portrait photographer is the 85-1.2. When that comes out, it's an interesting configuration. It looks very, very short and fat. Almost reminds me of the Sigma version. The what have they got, an 85 1.4 and a 135 1.8. It's sort of that sort of shape where it's a bit more squat and a lot more wider. So it'll be exciting to see what they do with that and how the glass performs. But that is an exciting option for me. I'm noticing I'm starting to cough a little now, so I'm going to call it a day on this video, but I'll get back to you very soon. I have a lot to talk about with accessories, and that'll be video number 2. So thank you for your time. Please comment if you've got something, opinion or something to share. Please do so, and do comment on my lights and my microphone stand. I'm interested to know what you might think of those. So you have a good day, guys, and thank you very much for your time.